Hi and welcome to challenge number 15, merge two arrays. In this challenge, our task is to combine two arrays into one. So if we have an array that is 1, 3, 5, and then we have another one that is 2, 4, 6, irrelevant of what kind of data is included within each of these arrays, our task is to just put the first array right here, so that's the first one, and the second array right after that. Now here for this challenge, we're not going to talk about any edge cases. We're just going to jump in and talk about the different solutions that any of these programming languages is going to provide for us. So the first one that we are going to get started with is going to be JavaScript. For JavaScript, I'm going to have 3 different solutions, and that's going to be the way that we're going to go about the other languages as well. Because this is sort of a simple challenge, and it needs a simple solution, but there are more than one way of getting to the solution. And in case you solve this challenge and your solution doesn't match mine's, it doesn't really matter, as long as you produce the same output. So there could be several other solutions. I'm just restricting this to 3. So the first solution is going to be using the concat method. Let me zoom this in. So we have solution 1. This is going to be concat method. This is like one of the oldest ways of combining 2 arrays together. For this, we're going to create a function, and I could just call it merge 2 arrays, and this is going to be 1 since this is the first solution. Now, what is this function going to accept? It's going to accept 2 arrays. And at the end of the day, this is going to produce 2 arrays as well. So we're going to grab our array 1, and on the array, we have this concat method. And what do we want to concat to this array is another array. And that's going to be array 2. And that's exactly what we are going to return from this function as well. So this part is done. We are going to solve this for the other 2 solutions as well, and then we're going to print our result. Solution 2 is solution 2. That is going to be the spread operator, which is a newer syntax. Relatively, it has been like already 10 years. So it's like modern ES6 plus syntax. I shouldn't say new syntax. This is going to be function merge 2 arrays 2. Again, we're going to grab array 1 and array 2. And the way we actually do this is with spread operator, you can spread all the array items. And that basically means you get rid of the square brackets for that array. So you have access to individual items within the array. But since we want to return an array from this function, we're going to put the square brackets there. And the spread operator is 3 dots. Array 1. This is going to basically put all the elements of array 1 here. And then it's going to add a comma. And it's going to put all the elements of array 2 here. And that's what we are going to return from this function. Solution 2. And now let's jump into solution 3. This is going to be using the flat method. And the flat method is actually a very interesting method. So let me first create my merge 2 arrays, version 3. We have the first array as the first parameter and the second array as the second parameter. So the way this flat works is it almost does the same thing as the spread operator, but it does it in a different way. So if we have, let's say, an array, this is an array, and we pass in our first array and our second array, what this becomes is we have the first array and the second array as nested items or nested arrays of this big array. And whenever I call the flat method, it is going to actually get rid of the array syntax for the nested arrays, but it is not going to get rid of the syntax, the array syntax on the big array or the parent array. And that's exactly what we want to return from here as well. And for solution, I've already created these 2 test cases. So we have our input 1 and input 2. And the way this flat actually works is like this. So I'm going to copy input 1, put it right there. I'm going to copy input 2, and I'm going to put it right there. And this flat method is going to get rid of the array syntax for input 2 as well as input 1. And at the end of the day, this is what we get. But this is going to be an array that we get. So this is our test cases, and we need our logs as well. So we have the concat, the spread, and the flat method. Let's take a look at this. Let me bring this up. Node a tab. Oh, first I need to jump to CD 015. Tab, enter, there we go. Node a tab, enter, and there we go. So we have our 135, 246. The solution is going to be the same for all three of them. And that's going to be a wrap up for our JavaScript solution. Let's jump into the TypeScript version of the solution. And much like with any of our other challenges, we're going to go manual with our TypeScript solution. So TypeScript 1 is going to be just one solution, but it is going to be leveraging some sort of an algorithm. So how are we going to go about this? The first thing that we need is our function. So I could call it the same thing, merge to arrays. And this is going to accept the first parameter, but that's going to be a numbers array. So the items within the array could only be of one type, and that's number. You can change this, but I just want to focus on numbers. And the second one is going to be the same thing, the second parameter. What is this function going to produce? It's going to produce an array. And what is the type of that? It is going to be numbers, a type of number. So what do we do here? Now, the way we went with our JavaScript solution was we didn't actually pay too much attention to the length of the array, the indices of individual items within the array, and what the final array that the function produces would have as length and as number of items or number of items. So we didn't pay attention to any of that. But since we want to go manual as possible, we need to really understand how big our input arrays are so we can estimate how big our output array is going to become. So if our input array, for our test case, our input arrays are going to have the same length, so 3 and 3. So our output array is going to have a maximum length of 6. Now, we don't care about, as I said, we don't care about edge cases like empty array or duplicates. We have already talked about all of them in previous challenges. You can take this challenge and enhance it, but I just want to talk about this one specific case. And that is grabbing all the items of the first array and putting it inside a new array, and then grabbing all the items of the second array and adding it to the end of the first one. And that's exactly going to be the focus of this solution as well. So the length of the first array plus the length of the second array, programmatically, that's going to be our total length. So let's go ahead and let's do that first. So we know what is the total length of the output array or the merged array. So I'm going to say total length. And where is this coming from? We have our array 1, and as soon as I do dot, we have all the properties of an array. We grab the length, and then we do that for our array 2 as well. There we go. So this is how big our output array is going to be. And we want our output array to be a new array, right? So I could call this output array, or I could call it merged array. Let's go ahead and let's call it merged. That is going to go well with the name of the function. So we have our merged array. This is going to have a type of number. I don't really need to specify it, but still. And now let's create a new array. So I'm going to grab the new array constructor, and the length of this is going to be equal to the total length. So by now we know how big our output array is. Now, if our first array has 3 items, we know that it has 3 items. We know where we're going to put the second array. So if our first array has 3 items, the indices are going to be 0, 1, 2, since indices start from 0. And at the exact index of 3, we're going to put the second array, right? So second array is going to start at the index of 3. But what if our first array has 4 items, then our second array is not going to start at index 3, rather index 4. And you can see, depending on the number of items that our first array is going to include, where we put our second array is going to be variable. It's not like a fixed position. So for this specific reason, we need to also have a variable or a state variable that is going to track how many items are within our first array, and right where the first array's items end, we're going to put the second array. So that variable is going to be called merged index. And of course, since indices start from 0, we're going to get started from 0. Now, let's go ahead and let's grab all the items of the first array and copy it and put it inside of our output array or merged array. We're going to do this 2 times, once for the first array and once for the second array. So the most manual way to do this is, of course, a for loop. So we're going to say for I is going to be 0, since indices start from 0, and that's the convention. And I is going to go for as long as 1 less than the length of the first array. Length, there we go. And in each iteration, or rather after each iteration, we increment the value of I with 1. So what do we want to do here? Well, let's go ahead and let's create a variable that is going to keep track of our current element. So I'm going to call this current element. And the current element is going to be the loop's iteration at that specific point. So if it is the loop's first iteration, the first element, which is the current element in this first example, is going to be 1. And if it is the loop's second iteration, that element is going to be 3. And in the third and final iteration, the element is going to be 5. But we want to keep this dynamic. That's why we're not going to fix and hardcode that. Now, since we have our current element, let's put it inside of the merged array. But keep in mind, this is our very first array, so we need to start from the beginning. So I'm going to say merged array, and I'm going to pass in my current element in there. But since I'm talking about an array, I need to specify an exact index at which, or a location at which I can put this array element. And that's going to become that's going to be our merged index. Now let's talk about this. We have this merge index, the value of which is 0, and we have our merged array. At this point, it is empty. So index 0 basically means the first element of the array. So current element in the first iteration is 1, and 1 is going to go and it's going to be stored inside of our merged array at the position of 0, which is the first position. All right. And then since that position has been taken by the first element of the first array, we need to move on to the next position. And how do we move on to the next position? So indices start from 0 and they go 1 up. So it's like 0 and then 1 and then 2. So we need to increment whatever the value of merged index is just by 1. That's why I'm going to put in there plus plus. So there we go. This is our, it should be a let. There we go. Let. Very good. So at the second iteration, the merge index's value is no longer 0, it is 1. And the item that we select is going to be 3. So 3 is going to be stored at the index of 1, which is the second position. And it is going to be repeated. This loop is going to repeat this logic for as many items there are in the first loop. And now we want to do the same thing for the second loop as well, right? So what we're going to do is, I could just type it out instead of copy pasting this. So since we have already selected I, the next convention is going to be J. And J is going to start from 0. J is going to go for as long as, it's going to iterate for as long as 1 less than the length of the second array. And after each iteration, we're going to increment the value of J by 1. Let's get the current element first. current element. That's going to be array 2, and at that specific iteration count. Now, after this, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our merged array and we're going to put the current element in there. Current element. Now, how do we know where we're going to put it? Now, keep in mind, this has been created very strategically, I would say. So this loop is going to run, and after this loop completes all of its iterations, then we're going to run this loop. So this loop, we know it's going to run 3 times. The first time, merge index's value is going to be 1. The second time, merged index's value is going to be 2. And the final time, the third one, the value of merged index is going to be equal to 3, right? So whenever we go inside of the second for loop, the merged index's value is already 3. And that's exactly the index that we want. So at the index of 3, we're going to put the first element of the second array. So let me pass in merged index. And in this way, none of the items of the second array is going to interfere, or it's going to override the items of the first array. Everyone is going to have their own place. And then we're going to increment the merge index because we want to do the same thing for the second array as well. And if you had a third one, you could have done that for the third one as well. And that's it. And finally, what do you want to return from this function? Of course, we want to return an array of numbers. So that's going to be our output array or merged array. And let's take a look at our test cases. Let me just copy paste them here. There we go. So we have our input 1, 135, 246. And there we go. We call that. And where is my console log? Let me just put the console log here. Let's save this. Let's go to terminal. First TSC, B tab, enter. This is going to compile our or transpile our TypeScript. And then we're going to run B tab, JS. There we go. So we got 135, 246. And this is how you would go about the solution of this if you were to do it manually. This is one way of doing it. And now that we're done with the solution for TypeScript, it is time to jump in and talk about the solution for Python. And for Python, we're going to go with 3 solutions as well, much like JavaScript, but of course, solutions are going to be language specific. And let's just get started. So the first solution is going to be solution 1. This is going to be, we're going to use list concatenation. So concat, right? So def merge underscore 2 arrays underscore 1. We're going to pass in our array 1 and array 2. So what do we want to do here? Basically, we're going to concatenate both of them with the, I should say, with the with plus operator. And we can do that. So we're going to say return array 1 plus array 2. That's like the simplest solution we're going to find. Let's talk about solution 2. Solution 2 is going to be, we could use the unpacking operator, and it is going to work in a similar fashion as the spread operator of JavaScript. And the star is the unpacking operator. Let's see how that works. I'm going to say merge. Let me just copy this name. It's too long. And you know what? The entire function definition. Let's put it there. We have our second solution. And how do we go about this? Well, since this is going to unpack all of the items, we still need our list syntax, right? So that's going to be square brackets. We pass in the star, that's going to be the first array, and then pass in star, that is going to be the second array. So this star is going to be like those 3 dots that we had in JavaScript. It's going to spread the items, or basically in Python, unpack them. And finally, the third solution is going to be, we're going to use the extend method. So extend, there we go. Let's go ahead and let's create our function. That's going to be solution 3. So how do we go about this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new array and we're going to call it result or merged underscore array, which makes more sense. And we're going to first make a shallow copy of our first array and store it inside of this merged array. And the way we do that is using this syntax. So what this basically means is we're going to get rid of the start of the array, we're going to get rid of the step for the array, and we're going to get rid of the stop for the array. That basically means that we don't want to start from a specific position or end at a specific position or have a specific step. So if you're familiar with this syntax, this is basically one way for us to select one item from a list in Python or a range of items. So you specify, okay, you say, okay, start from the first index and end at the fourth index. You could also specify a step for that. So you could say, okay, select every second item or select every third item. But since we want to select the entire array, this is going to be a shallow copy, all right? And this is actually Python's slice notation that creates a shallow copy. I could just write it here. Create a shallow copy. Now, since we have copied all of the items of the first array or the first list inside of our merged array, I should just call this list since we're in Python. List. And let's go ahead and let's add the second list to the merged list as well. So we're going to grab our merged list, and we're going to use the extend method. So wherever, and let me just write it correctly, wherever the first list ends, we're going to add the second list at that specific position. There we go. And let's return our merged list as well. There we go. These are the 3 solutions for Python. And let me just copy paste our logs and our print statements, and we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and let's run this. Python C tab, enter. There we go. So we got 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6 for all of them. We have the plus operator, we have the unpacking, and we have the extend plus the shallow copy. The next language that we're going to tackle is going to be Go. So let me just close this. Jump in here. Where is Go? There we go. So for Go, we're going to go with 3 solutions as well. The first one is going to be using the append method. So let me just write it. Solution 1. That's going to be append plus variadic expansion. There we go. And what do I mean by append plus variadic expansion? Variadic expansion basically means that the length of our array is not going to be fixed. It's going to be depending on whatever the first array's length and the second array's length is. It's sort of, you could think of like the way we went almost with TypeScript. Let's go ahead and let's see how this works. First thing, of course, the first thing that we need to do is import our main package. So in package main, and there we go. Let's come down here. I'm going to func merge 2 arrays 1. So the first array is going to come right here, and we're going to have the second array there as well. What this function is going to return is going to be an array that has a type of integer. Let's specify that here as well. And integer, there we go. And let me just fix this syntax. And there we go. So how do you go about this? The first thing that we want to do is find out what the length of the arrays are, and also create a variable that is going to not only get the length, but also create an empty array for us as well. So I'm going to have my merged array here. And using short variable declaration, we're going to use the make method. So the make method is going to accept three parameters, you could say. The first parameter is going to be the type of the array. Type of the array is going to be integer. The second parameter is going to be the starting length of the array. So that's why we say variadic expansion. So we start with a length of 0, and then the length is going to be always variable or varying. I'm going to start from 0, but what is the maximum that the length is going to go? Well, it's going to be the length of the first array plus the length of the second array. That's going to be our maximum length for our array. All right, so now we have our merged array, which is an array and it has its maximum length. Now let's go ahead and let's populate it. So I'm going to grab my merged array and I'm going to append to it the first array. So I'm going to say merged array. Let's pass in the first array. And then I'm going to append to it the second array as well. Now, if you're wondering about these three dots, they're actually you can think of them as the spread operator or the unpacking operator. And they basically, the three dots, they unpack all the items, all the individual items of the first array, and it just puts the individual items inside of the merged array. If I were to get rid of that, our merged array is going to contain two items, and both of them are going to be arrays. So we're going to end up with nested arrays, and then we would have needed to flatten them. But in this scenario, we just spread all the items and then just put the items inside of our merged array. And finally, what do we return from this? We return our merged array. That's going to be our very first solution to this. Let me just copy this, put it right here. For the second solution, we're going to go with copy plus pre-allocated size. Solution 2. Let's say copy plus pre-allocated slice or size. Let's go ahead and let's complete this. So how do you go about this? First of all, we select the total length. We specify what the total length is, and that's going to be the length of the first array plus the length of the second array. And then we need to create an array that is going to basically be our merged array. There we go. This is going to have, we're going to use the make method. It's the type of this is going to be integer. So integer. Come on, buddy. Integer. Always the other side. And what is going to be the length of this? Well, the length of this is going to be our total length. And now let's go ahead and let's copy this. But when we're copying it like this, we need to know what is the index at which the first array's last item ends. Because right after that, we're going to add the first item of the second array. And I could just create a new variable and I'm going to call it n, which is going to be the, we're going to use this in order to track where the first array ends so we can put the second array right after it. And let's grab our copy method. And what this copy method is going to do for us is it's going to copy elements from our source array or source slice to our destination slice. So where is our source slice? That's going to be our array 1. And where is our destination slice? That's going to be our merged array. Now, let's go ahead and let's add the second array there as well. So I'm going to grab this copy method and I'm going to grab the merged array. But now, where is the index? What is the index at which the first array has ended? We could use that. We could grab it using the n variable that we created. And right after that, we're going to add the second array. And finally, we return merged array. There we go. And now let's go ahead and let's talk about the third solution. The third solution is going to be manual. So let me just put it here, and this is going to be, now this solution is going to match, it's going to be almost exactly like the TypeScript one, but it's going to be, the syntax is going to be Go specific. I'm going to say just manual. There we go. So how do we go about this? Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to specify our total length and also create a new array that is going to contain the newly copied items from array 1 and array 2. I'm going to call this as always merged array. And this is going to be using the make method. The make method is going to have an array with a type of integer, but the length of this is going to be very specific. It's going to be all the items of the first array plus all the items of the second array. All right, so we have that. We need to specify an index so we can keep track of where the first array ends, so we can put the second array right after it. Now, how do we go about this? Well, manual is for loop, so we just go with for loop. So whenever we iterate over slices in Go, we get two things. We get the index that we don't care since we already count that. And the second thing is going to be the actual value or the item of the array. So there we go, item. Now we're going to use range in order to iterate over the first array. And what do we do in each iteration? Well, we select our merged array and we add an item to it. But we need to specify a specific position in order to add that. And that's going to be our index, right? And so in the first iteration, 1 is going to go and it's going to be stored at index 0 because that's the current value of index. But then in the second iteration, since the index 0 has already been occupied, we need to generate a new index, and we do that using ++. And that's it. So we do this for the first array and we do it for the second array as well. Shift tab, there we go. And I need to do a tab. So this is going to be array 2. And we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and let's return our merged array. So we're done with the solution, but I need to fix a couple of these typos. So this is going to be array 2. Very good. And now let's see how we can print this. And since I don't want to waste your time, I'm just going to go ahead and paste this main function that is going to print our 3 solutions. So the first solution was the append, the second one was the copy, and the third one is the manual. Let's save this. Let's go to terminal. And in here, I'm going to say go run this file. Let's hit enter and wait for a few seconds. And there we go. So here we have our first input and the second input. And we can see for all 3 of them, we get the same result for all 3 solutions. There we go. So with this, the challenge solution for Go has come to an end. And we're going to talk about the final language, which is the Rust. So let's go into that file. So how are we going to go about this with Rust? I am going to go with 3 solutions as well. The first solution is going to be using the concat method. So let's go ahead and let's write this. I'm going to say solution 1 concat. There we go. So first off, we need to define a function. So I'm going to say fn merge underscore 2 arrays underscore 1. So this function needs to receive 2 arrays. It's going to receive array 1, but then since we're in Rust, we need to type annotate this. Now, since I am defining that, or I am assuming that the arrays are just going to be numbers, I'm just going to type annotate it as an integer. So this is going to be an i32 integer, but since we don't want to take ownership, this is going to be a reference. I'm going to pass in this ampersand sign. That's our first array, and we do the same thing for the second array. This is going to be a reference to an integer 32-bit. So what is the function going to return? This is going to return an array or a vector in Rust. the type of which we have already specified, the type of the items inside of the vector. So how do we concat? Well, we are going to grab our first array, and we're going to grab our second array, and we're going to call this method concat on it, and that's it. And this concat method is basically going to copy all the items of the first vector and the second vector and put it inside of this vec syntax. And since the type of the function is vector i32, it's just going to return that for us. That's going to be the first solution. For the second solution, we are going to actually use an iterator chain. And we've already done something like this in one of our previous challenges, and we're going to actually repeat that process here as well. So I'm going to say iterator chain, and let's take a look at this. So the function itself, the function definition is going to stay the same. So I'm just going to copy this part, put it right here, and this is going to be 2. There we go. And now the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our first array. I'm going to convert it into an iterator. And the reason for this is because we want to iterate over the items and do something with these items. And then we are going to chain all of these items from the first array with the second array. But in order to chain that, we need to convert the second array into an iterator as well. So an iterator chain basically means that we group all of these methods. We basically chain all of these methods one onto the other. All right, so this is an iterator chain. So at this point in our solution, what we have as our items is that they are references. They're not actually real values that we can put inside of a new vector. So we need to collect them and put them inside of a new vector. For that, we're going to call the collect method. We could specify the type of this as a vector. So this is going to be a vector, which is going to have a type of i32. And let's execute the function as well. But before collecting this, we need to make sure that we have the actual values, not references. So for that reason, we are going to call a method that is called copied. And this is going to get rid of the references and give us the actual values. And this should be it for the solution. Let's jump in and let's talk about the third version of the solution. In this one, we're going to go somewhat. We went with Go. We're going to talk about pre-allocated array with the possibility of extension, that variadic expansion. So we have our third solution right here. This is going to be pre-allocated plus expansion. There we go. So here, there we go. I have it. Let me just convert it, change it to 3, and let's get started with the third solution. So in here, the first thing that we need to do is we need to specify the total length of both of the arrays. So we create a new array and we specify the total length of both of the arrays as the length for that new array. And how do you do that here? We could have a variable, we could call it total length. And this is going to be array1.length plus array2.length. There we go. So this is going to give us the total length. I'm going to create a new variable and I'm going to give it a total length of this. So this is going to be a mutable variable because it is going to change it's going to change incrementally, right? And you could call it result. You could call it merged array. I'm going to say merged array. And this is going to be, let's grab our vec because we want to create a new vector. So I'm going to grab my vector and I'm going to say the capacity with capacity, I'm going to pass in our total length. There we go. So now what we need to do is we need to select our merged array and pass in all the items from the first array. or basically copy all the items from the first array and then copy all the items from the second array. And how do we do that? Well, we have a method that's called extend from slice that is going to copy all of the elements from a specific array or slice. So we could say merged array dot extend underscore from slice, and then I'm going to pass in array 1. Terminate this, and then I'm just going to pass in array 2. And finally, what do we return? We return our merged array. And we should be good to go. And the last thing that we need to do here is actually print the result of these 3 functions. And for that, I'm just going to copy paste this here. So here we have our first and second input, and we call our 3 functions with the concat, the chain, and the extend methods. And we pass in input 1 and input 2 as references. Let's save this and let's jump into the terminal, clear this. And now I'm just going to run this, Rust C, merge 2 arrays. We got an executable, and let's just run that executable. And there we go. So for all 3 solutions, we get the same desired output. And with this, the solution to this challenge has come to an end. See you in the next one.